Hello everyone. Welcome to BB101 Molecular and Cellular Biology. Cells are fundamental units of life. The tiny microscopic structure is composed of number of organelles. Each cell type has distinct characteristic features. The cell is made up of basic organic molecules like carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, etc. In this lecture, Professor Srivastava shall walk you through the cells, describing its various components, mentioning the characteristics of different types of cells.
All right, very good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to BB 101 course, MCB module. We have interacted once already earlier, so you are aware that this course has 3 modules. And first one, which I am starting, is about molecular and cellular biology. Today, I'm going to give you a glimpse of tour of a cell. The outline of today's lecture is, first we'll try to discuss that why this course in first place, why we are teaching you biology at IIT Bombay. All of you are engineering aspirants and have joined here to become engineers. So why once again biology has come to you? Which of the properties are associated with life? And then I'll talk about cell and its properties. The first learning objective is why biology for engineers? There are many problems which we are all facing, right? I'm sure you will hear all the time issues of pollution, global warming, population is always exploding. There are so many strains which you are seeing emerging. Drug resistance is happening. A lot of public health issues are there. And because of many type of pollution and global warming changes, climate change is happening. Many natural disasters are happening. Biodiversity is getting lost. Deforestation happening. So all of these are in a way that indicates that we are facing many type of issues, which is just not only about the health, but even our own environment. So the question comes that, who should solve this problem? Whether it's the responsibility of biologists or engineers, or somebody else who should be looking into this particular aspect of trying to resolve these problems. But ultimately, if you think these problems are going to affect everybody almost in the same magnitude. So it's probably our cumulative responsibility that we have to look for more of the interdisciplinary approaches and skills for providing the effective solutions. I hope this also conveys all of you that in which way we should be thinking about many different bigger problems, which is much beyond our individual centric approaches. While I'm going further, let me request TS to make sure everybody who is still entering in the wait room is allowed right now, today being the first lecture. So please allow people who are in the wait list to come to the class. All right, and right now there is a poll on your screen again. We understand that you're all engineering aspirants and you have liked mathematics probably more over biology. But we just want to know your views that what was your inclination about, and think about in which way mathematics you liked more or biology still you liked, but had more of your inclination towards math, that's why you chose that, or you had only option of taking the mathematics, that's why you have to leave biology. Many of these options are probably in your mind. We would like to look into your approach of taking this thought. All right, so I think poll is still going on. We see large number of students are indicating that the biological names, especially taxonomical names, are quite difficult to memorize, of course, and a lot of things were required rote learning. So if you see the poll results, math was more logic oriented, and biology required a lot of mugging around as well as a lot of scientific names to remember and memorize. So of course, in this course, we would like you not to memorize much and not to remember at least any of the scientific names. So we hope that it's going to be less scary for you, and try to bring you more of the applications and a solution-oriented way, like in which way different disciplines can come together to try to make more stronger impact. In the previous short clip of COVID-19, we had asked you two polls. One was regarding zoonosis, which you have, most of you have answered correctly, 75%. And second poll was regarding the most prevalent strain, which actually really confused many of you. The current emerging strain is not the most prevalent strain. Still, Delta remains the most so Delta strain still remains the most prevalent one. And so now let's move on and look into various ways of why we are emphasizing that biology course or understanding biological concepts at early stage, and the seeding this idea to all of you could be important. So there are many successful examples of bio-inspired engineering, right? Let's just look at this beautiful bird. I'm sure you'll appreciate this is a kingfisher, which has a unique beak, very sharp, and with that it has ability to just go dive into the water very quietly and just splash and catches the fish. So because it can go very silently without making any noise, it can easily catch the fish and fish will not move. Same observation was made by one of the engineers in Japan, E.G. Nekatsu. And he was an engineer, but he was a bird watcher. He liked to watch the birds. And he felt that, okay, there were some trains going inside the tunnel, which makes so much noise in that area. And he thought, why not try to design some train which could be, like the beak shape, and that probably will go very silently, and it can be much faster, in fact. And that idea actually resulted into the Shinkansen bullet train, which is the fastest bullet train. And really, it's very quiet. If you even just walk by, you cannot make the difference that there is any sound coming from the train. So the new learning efficiency from Kingfisher resulted into the quiet train, the less electricity consumption, and much faster travel. This beautiful flower, if you look at lotus, looks so beautiful, so as its leaves. And leaves does not, have the water on the top. Always water is rippling. So this particular phenomenon that, the leaf of lotus, they have these minute crevices on which makes the leaf surface very rough, and that traps the air that makes it more hydrophobic, and therefore you don't see water on top of these leaves. The same phenomenon was observed by this company, Green Shield, which make the paint, and they brought in this particular phenomenon, which is now known as lotus effect, which provides the waterproofing on the paint. And imagine that, cities like Mumbai, which rains heavily, the wall with the paint having this type of paint can make it really achieving higher water and stain repellency, and it can be much more durable. Architecture. Imagine these tall buildings. They require so much air conditioning, so much power. And even somebody could learn the, this important message from the termites. Termites, if you go to jungles and you will see the big termitorium, and inside that they maintain the cooling environment, because the way they have a lot of holes inside on the around the termitorium, that brings these type of these holes, they forces the hot and stale air to move out, and therefore the inside environment remains very cool. Similar observation was applied by Max Pierce, an engineer who designed this particular huge building in Zimbabwe, and that resulted into very efficient energy system in that building, and less air conditioning was required, and that resulted into better ventilation, better cooling. So again, some of these are really interesting examples that how people can make observations even from the nature and try to apply that to engineering devices or architecture or different type of products. This creature, I'm sure, does not require any introduction. All of you know it is dolphin. Dolphins, they are able to communicate in the sea almost 25 kilometers away by using some special frequencies. And therefore, with this high frequencies, they can actually convey the messages to their members easily up to the 25-kilometer distance. The company Evologics, they use this particular phenomenon and develop this type of underwater robotics and fluid dynamic shape optimization, which now has resulted into the data transmission system, which is employed in the Indian Ocean for alerting against tsunami and this kind of early warning system for the ocean. So again, some important messages learned from dolphin may result into some devices like this. This is a desert beetle. Again, will not ask you the geological name of it, Stenocara gracilipis, which collects the water droplet and uses that even in the dry environment like this. In the morning when there is a fog there, it can take some of these water droplets and rolls back to its mouth so that now it can utilize that water. A similar phenomenon was observed by a student. I think he moved from IIT Bombay and went to MIT, who developed this particular device, which is mimicking this type of phenomenon and resulted into development of fog harvesting technology. Idea was if this kind of meshes, which is similar to the desert beetle, if they can trap the water and below that it can keep the buckets, it can in the morning, it can keep the very pure water droplets, which can really help some of the people who are living in that kind of surrounding. And this could be really important for people who are having so much dearth of the water in the desert area. So I hope we have witnessed and conveyed that there are many interesting nature's creation and design elements which could really solve many of the complex human problems. I'll take a couple of points. I think some students have raised hands. So Shruti, you want to unmute yourself and ask a question?
Hello, sir. I'm not able to rename myself despite rejoining and changing the settings again and again. Please don't cut my attendance for today. I'm really not able to do it since morning.
Do not worry. I think let the TAs handle that. So please raise hand only if you have any scientific questions so that I don't get distracted in the limited time. All right. So I gave you some stories in detail, but that's not end of it. There are too many success stories, and of course I cannot go very long on keep describing about it. But let me give you some more glimpses of existing other bio inspired engineering technologies and biomimicry. Gecko technology developed by Robert Full, and they observed these type of lizards limb and utilize that how lizard can actually climb on the wall. And the similar kind of phenomenon was utilized in which way now one could think about the Spider-Man climbing up on the wall. A DNA sequencing technology known as nanopore that operates by taking the electrical changes as the nucleic acid can flow from the protein nanopores. Now, again, one of the very interesting sequencing technology, which is now utilizing the creations from the nature and utilizing that to sequence the DNA or RNA segments in the real-time manner. Even for renewable energy resources. In Dubai, there has been a huge solar power plant, which is mimicking the design of sunflower. And they have made these rows of mirrors which reflects the rays of sun to the central generator tower, and that works like the sunflower phenomenon, and that is very efficient solar power plant. Likewise, there is the aquaporin technology. Aquaporins are the proteins which are present in all the living cells, and they're only allowing the water molecules to pass. this company came up with this particular water purifying product, which is inspired from this aquaporin technology. Likewise, the plants have the unique ability of doing photosynthesis. Now, Melchiori, an engineer, and his team tried to mimic the ways in which plants use the photosynthesis, and then try to reduce the CO2, produce the more cleaner gas, and help fighting against the global warming. Now, in this particular, they are coming with many projects, and one recent innovation is about a carbon bioconverter technology, CBC, which is a phototrophic algal cultivation system. Again, if you know, algae grows in the sea, and they really harvest lot of photosynthetic energy in that way. So these phototrophs, they can harness natural process of photosynthesis. And so many type of products could be developed based on this inspiration taken from the photosynthesis of the leaves. All of your dream companies, where would you like to work after a few years after graduating from here? Like Google, they have the big projects on Google Brain. Google also has the smart contact lens project. IBM, they have a huge investment on the neurons and working on the computational biology to learn about the brain. IBM has also launched this supercomputer Watson, which very much behaves like the knowledgeable doctor, and it has really contributed a lot of very super fast decision making. And even during the COVID time, it was heavily contributing and employed. Even at IIT Bombay, now you'll be more surprised that almost 15% faculty members, not only from Department of Biosciences and Bioengineering, but faculty from almost many departments, from chemistry, chemical engineering, MEMS, electrical, mechanical, you can see the names. Many faculty members are involved in applied and translational research. And as a result, now we have a big healthcare consortium, which is employing faculty of IIT Bombay along with many local hospitals and centers and companies around Mumbai, so that could really trigger and accelerate the process of innovation in the healthcare research. IIT Bombay faculty are pursuing interdisciplinary bioresearch. Many engineers, they are coming forward to work on the biological problems and try to come up with new indigenous, affordable, and efficient devices. For example, in this case, a mobile-based diagnostic system for the urine and the blood sugar test has been developed. A prosthetic artificial limbs development from the CAD Center, mobile-based diagnostics for the sickle cell anemia. So again, many of these innovations are happening just from our faculty colleagues around here. And of course, you can visit our Department of Bioscience and Bioengineering and IIT Bombay other faculty members' websites, and you can see really the detailed research is going on and quite a bit of interdisciplinary work happening. I'm sure you are aware that most of the leading centers in the world, whether you talk about Harvard, Stanford, MIT, most of them have very dedicated now the biomedical research programs, have very strong growing community where computational scientists and the biologists and clinicians, they all work under the same roof and umbrella to try to solve the problems. And that has really accelerated many of these biodesign programs. And that is one of the key growing area in the world. So many of the IIT Bombay alumni, students like you who moved forward in the career, have also continued to, who have now become faculty members in US and other places, have continued to work on the interface of biology and engineering and develop the research in that direction. Dr. Harmeet Malik took some course from BSBE and utilizing a lot of interdisciplinary area of research. Vivek Jayaraman from the aerospace is working on towards problems like the neurosciences. Professor Chetan Khosla at Stanford, again graduate from chemical engineering and chemistry department. He has now moved forward, and I had one meeting with him at Stanford, and it was very nice thing to ask him that his view about a student taking biology course at IIT Bombay. And of course, his answer was that it is 100% required that every engineer at IIT Bombay who graduates should have exposure of biology. That is very interesting and strong statement, but I see the value of it, the way he sees at Stanford and all the bigger institutes, how biology is really driving all the inventions now And of course, given the COVID time now, all of you will also appreciate how important it is to work in this area. Now, another poll comes on the screen here. What do you think, can help us in overcoming the current pandemic scenario? Of course, you have many options here. Politicians have also played important role, but of course, scientists, as many of you have mentioned, have really contributed the most, probably to really understand, first of all, what is a causative organism. Like, we had no idea from where this people are getting sick. So the sequencing technology is the knowing about the sequence of this new pathogen, new strain, then developing the test based on that, and then coming up with the possible ways of detection, followed by looking at therapeutic aspect and vaccine development. It was actually a lot of, the scientific contribution which has really emerged in front of all of us together. Shivesh, you have a question, you can ask, you can unmute yourself and ask me a question. Shivesh Gupta, you want to ask a question? All right, if you raise hand, please be available to talk. Otherwise, it just wastes class time.
Hello,
Okay.
sir, am I audible?
You are audible now.
So, like in the lecture 0, you said that the 21st century was a biological era.
Correct.
Why don't we see this enthusiasm from the industry in the placement seasons?
Well, you will see the shift now. It has already started seeing the shift, right? People, most of the time, people are more short-sighted. They only look at the things which is happening around that time rather than thinking about future visionary aspect. But now if you think about the bigger companies like IBM and Google and Amazon and all of them, why they are taking the huge mega projects? Because they are having the much longer vision, much broader vision. So they are already planning 20 years ahead and looking into where to invest in the artificial limb, neurons, and looking for the brain and looking at the supercomputers. Whereas most of the small industries, they look for the immediate requirements. Right now, the situation in the pandemic time is, of course, the biotechnology and biology and clinicians are the most growing field, right? All the pharma sector, anywhere trained, is going to get immediately employed. So right now, the scenario has definitely changed in the placement. But in general, I think, as you rightly mentioned, the overall view has to change, and people have to appreciate that engineering discipline has contributed a lot, but still there are many health issues, and of course, pandemic has exposed a lot, but even otherwise, cancer and many problems are in front of us, which require a lot of solutions, and therefore, there is need for more investment. And definitely there's a lot of job openings and more career opportunities are happening, not only directly in the industries which is looking for the viral and this kind of, the vaccine right now, but in general towards even the broader horizon of healthcare is a big sector. I hope that addresses your query, Shivesh.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. So COVID-19 research at IIT Bombay, even IIT Bombay during the lockdown time was very active. Many faculty members have developed many technologies, and like a helmet patient interface, HPI was developed. One of the faculty member, Professor Ambarish, who will talk to you after the mid-sem, they developed UVC germicidal unit. One of the pioneer faculty member, late Professor Rinti Banerjee, they developed the self-disinfecting masks. And the computer science faculty member, they developed Tapestry, one of the pooling strategy of doing the real-time PCR, which became very popular, that how to reduce the number of tests to be conducted. And our own lab, proteomics lab, we try to develop the alternate complementary test of COVID-19, looking at, while real-time PCR looks for the mRNA and amplification of that, why not directly look at the viral peptides? And we tried some of the technologies from the mass spectrometry based approaches, which I'm not going to talk in detail, developed into some of these tests, which looks for the spike proteins and nucleoproteins of the virus. And those one could then try to uniquely look for their prediction. Also, a patient is moving from mild to the severe group, and how to predict that prognosis. Again, we try to come up with the mass spec based test from the human blood sample or plasma sample, which helped us to look into the disease prognosis. All right, next question from Aryan. Unmute and please ask the question. Aryan. Aryan, you want to ask a question?
Yes, sir. So I wanted to know, so a lot of technology is being developed these days do not really focus on the health aspect of the users as well as the climate around them. So, is there a possibility that we can develop technologies such as these at the institute itself in order to address these issues?
I think you raised a very nice point. Many times the R&D labs, like research and development lab, like many of ours at IIT Bombay, they work into coming up with a hypothesis, testing out with the experiments, and trying to come up with some solution. But those are actually still quite far from the actual endpoint user, right? So when these technologies has to be deployed at the endpoint, the users who have to use them, then there is a different bridge has to be matched from the industry side. Like the industries are working in that area, once they come forward and take these innovation, they look into the intricacies of deployment. And IIT Bombay actually provides a lot of incubation possibility. In fact, we have a science center which also looks for many of the entrepreneurship activities and try to connect with the industries. Many industries, they try to license the technologies quickly, and they work with the users to try to deploy that to the final users. It is happening. A large number of innovations, at least from IIT Bombay and other IITs, are coming forward for the end users finally. But there is definitely a lot of gap there. When you develop something in the lab and when you try to deploy that to the end user, there is a lot of problems there. In our case, like we have developed this technology, but that is very instrument driven, very heavy gadget driven. If you have these crores worth of the instrument, you can do those tests. If you don't have that, how to deploy that in a simple test form in a clinical setting in the small path lab? Again, there is a need to translate these knowledge to the smaller units or to the much more easily deployable test. So that's where I think we have to bridge that gap. And you have rightly raised the point. There is a need for more incubation and having more of the connectivity with the industry. But at IIT Bombay, we are very fortunate to have a lot of those connect already established with industries. All right, so what we are talking today, and of course in this course, I hope you are at least feeling a little bit relief, not anymore those tough terminologies for taxonomy. Rather, we are looking at a new biology for 21st century, where we are looking at domain knowledge from different disciplines, from engineering, mathematics, biologists, physics, chemistry, and all other disciplines coming together to look for some of the major societal problems and try to then use that for the health, environment, and food, various type of major issues which we cannot solve alone. All right, so this is why this motivation for this course is to provide all of you some key biological concepts at early stage of your career, at least to make you appreciate that biological concepts are seeding those ideas can be useful when you are growing up into the new specialized domains. And then you can maybe think about some ideas that which might be helping to solve this bigger problem. And of course, biology, as you can see right now in the pandemic time, has influenced all of us. And understanding this subject can prepare well, not only as a common person to become more educated, but also as an expert who can bring in the biomedical and the bioengineering, those kind of discipline and new inventions, bridging this type of gap. And of course, as you will advance in your career at IIT Bombay, you also have opportunities to take the minor courses in biology. It means like after taking the 101 course, BB 101, you can now also build your further biology knowledge to go further and take some of the other specialized courses along with your major discipline of engineering, which at the end will give you a minor degree in biology. So you can have a major degree in computer science and minor degree in biology, both. And that will have a really tremendous value given the growing need of this particular area, and all the top institutes are looking at people who are at least skilled in their own domain, but also appreciate and knowledge having in the biology area. So with this, let me just share you a small video clip of one of our PhD student who is jointly working with me and Professor Siddharth from electrical engineering. Idea is to take the biological concept and develop some device. And he's trying to learn on this interface. I just thought to give a short clip from his side.
My research topic is development of a portable microimaging instrument. Now, I want to give some glimpse regarding the motivation. First of all, it is an interdisciplinary research activity. The traditional microdetection setup which we have, these are very much costly. And this instrument which I am developing, that can be useful in rural and remote healthcare unit. and the robust setup requires minimum supervision and maintenance. And finally, application of machine learning and artificial intelligence algorithm is possible in the instrument. Now, microarray. What is microarray? So microarray, basically, it's a kind of a high throughput platform where several proteins are printed on the chip surface. Mostly 45,000 proteins can be printed over the chip surface in the duplicates. So what is the requirement of the microarray? Basically, it is giving us some idea regarding the protein-protein interaction, biomarker discovery, all these things. So different disease point of view, you can screen this particular microarray. Like at this point of time, we are working in pituitaries, colon adenocarcinoma, as well as the COVID. So these things for the biomarker discovery point of view, protein-protein interaction point of view, this is very important. Now coming to the detection point of view, why this is very important. So as the development of the setup point of view, you need to know how to detect the basically the signal. When the hybridization happen or this kind of a protein-protein interaction happen on the chip surface, then I need to detect that particular signal. This is called the fluorescence signal. So what is fluorescence? Because fluorescence is really important because to detect the signal, how you can detect the signal, and one dyes are playing a very vital role. This is called Psi3 or Psi5 dyes. So now this is the reason fluorescence, we need to know something regarding the fluorescence. So fluorescence point of view, you can expect this kind of energy conversion. Right, the excitation, when you can get some excitation, impose some excitation in this particular platform, then excite the molecule of the Psi3 and Psi5, that these are called the secondary antibodies, you must say. So then obviously after getting the reflection on transmission wavelength, this wavelength little bit in a the energy of the particular the emissions signal is little bit lower than the excitation wavelength. This is called the fluorescence. Now, what happens if the energy is lesser? Because if energy is lesser, as there is a kind of an indirect relation between the energy and the wavelength, like E proportional to 1 by lambda. And if E is decreased, then lambda will be increased. That means if this is Psi3, that means after the hybridization, if it changes its property, then for the detection point of view, you can see that this is my excitation, right? The Psi3 point of view, you can see this is the excitation peak of a particular wavelength. Then emission point of view, you can see the wavelength is different, but the particular wavelength is different for the emission point of view. So this is called the shifting of the wavelength. This is called the very technical term we use. This is called Stokes shift. So now the design foundation point of view, designer like you, I'm designing, when I'm designing these things, I need to know regarding this excitation wavelength as well as the emission wavelength. Now, the traditional microdata setup which we have, why I'm developing this kind of portable thing? Because these are very much of kind of a weight is a major concern for this particular existing setup like the scanner as well as the traditional setup, and obviously the cost. It's a huge costly setup of the scanner point of view, which we actually have in our lab. So this is the reason I usually prefer to go for this portable instrument, which will be can be actually utilized for the many rural healthcare unit as well, and for its cost will be very much less. Now, in the traditional setup, there are these kind of lasers are usually used, which you can see. This can be 530 or 635 for the something like the quality checking and for the auto antibody profiling of the chip of the microarray. Then ND filter, why this is used? This is also important to reduce the kind of effect called the photo bleaching. Then obviously the glass light is required, emission CCD, and this setup, which is the traditional setup, usually work in the practically this is called the reflection mode. So there actually weight is a major concern because of the setup point of view. You can expect a much more space, but we cannot afford it in our setup because we want a kind of a portable setup. That is why we are going for the transmission. So now in transmission mode, you can see this is kind of excitation source which we can use. That can be, might be laser, but laser we cannot use because its cost is that much high. So I am incorporating my setup, that is the LED. Now next thing is that ND filter I will also impose, and microarray chip already told you that how the microarray chip will look like. This is kind of microarray chip. You can see in this way. So this is kind of microarray chip I have to place over there. Then emission filters, how the emission filter also look like. This is kind of an emission filter, which I'm incorporating in my setup. Excitation source, I cannot tell you much because it's in research and I'm incorporating some invention over there. So I cannot show you that. But when I started the experiment, you can see this is kind of a LEDs particular matrix I have used when I started to think all these concepts. So step by step, we usually proceed. And finally, the detector. So detector point of view, you can see this is a kind of a detector. This is a CMOS sensor, and everything is compatible with some kind of a controller. So itself inside it, there is a controller is working. And for the excitation point of view, it is also maintained, controlled by the specific controller. It is a very good controller. So now overall system is like this. So how now I want to show something regarding the filter as well. I already told you that emission filter is like this. So it is actually helping you to block some specified signal, physical wavelength, and pass some specified wavelength, because it will actually help you to pass your interest wavelength. This is the thing of the filter we usually use in our setup. And this is kind of an ND filter. You can see this is kind of an ND filter, which I told you that it's reduced the photo bleaching effect. And this is the practically this filter, this is called long pulse filter. So now finally, this is my setup, which I actually developed in my lab. And here, this image I found from the microarray chip point of view. When I place that chip on the surface, that particular setting, this is kind of a setup where I actually placed the glass slide and got the this kind of microarray chip output over there. And this is kind of a image you can expect from the traditional setup. This is called the scanner point of view. So now.
All right, thank you, Arko. So as you see, like, a student from electrical engineering background, but also spending some time in understanding the biological concept, can then understand that what is intricacies required to develop these devices. If you're just only learning the engineering concept and you do not have the idea for the the final product, how it should be deployed, then I think that you cannot make the best type of device from that point of view. Let's now move on to the next point, which is various properties and processes which are associated with life. So I'm sure, like, you will see different type of organism around us, whether it's like the fruit fly or the roundworms, different type of flowers from the mustard to the tail grass, and of course human. All of these are model organisms for studying for different type of phenomenon. When genome sequencing projects were happening, which was trying to understand which are all genes constitute these organisms and whether there is sufficient difference based on the genome in all of these model organisms. What it turned out to be that humans are not very different from the gene number point of view than other organisms. And that was one of the, really astonishing thing, because everybody was hoping that the genes will explain us all the differences in these type of model organisms. Also, one thing which is very peculiar, that many of these organisms, like when you look at all these pictures, which looks very different for all of this model organism, from bacteria E. coli to the Drosophila melanogaster to Arabidopsis, C. elegans or yeast Saccharomyces cerevisiae, all of them, they look very different, but their biochemical properties are quite common. So many of the protein, when you look at that level, or various type of gene properties, they are quite similar across different group of organisms. Despite that, at the morphological level, you can see that they're very different. Many of the processes which govern the life, you can learn from different examples here. For example, butterfly is showing the, from the nectar, the energy processing. Sunflower, so ordered structure of the flower. Rabbit, it for homeostasis, it regulates the heat regulation from its ear. Pygmy seahorse, it shows evolutionary adaptation by changing the color and adapting to the new color environment. Growth and development is important for all the life processes. Some of the specific type of plants like Venus flytrap, they trap these insects and use that for the nitrogen source. Reproduction is, of course, important. So many of these properties and processes which are associated with life, you can see everywhere, and you can see some very distinct and interesting examples. However, the central dogma of life, starting from the genes are going to make all the transcripts, which is known as a process known as the transcription. From the RNA, messenger RNA, the proteins are going to be synthesized in a process known as translation. So this entire movement of the information from the genes to the transcripts to the proteins is known as central dogma. And now there are technologies which can look at not only one gene at a time, but all the genes together, and various type of sequencing technology that are there, that is known as the whole genome analysis. And likewise, all the transcript comes under the transcriptome analysis. All the protein analysis comes under the proteome analysis. Incidentally, we work in this particular area of proteomics and looking at also integrating how this type of information of different molecules of life, which is governing these phenomenon, how one could try to utilize them together. Like, you cannot just study the properties in isolation. If you want to understand a complex problem, you have to look at the transcript, the proteins, their genetic changes, all of them together in a field which is known as system biology, which governs that entire activity together. And that's where a lot of computational power comes into the play. And many of the computer science engineer and the people working in this area are now coming forward with the system biological models and simulation, which could make a lot of predictions for the unknowns. All right, let's take a quick question from Ninad. Ninad, please unmute yourself and ask the question. Can you hear me, Ninad? All right, your hand is down. So let's move on to the next learning objective, which is cell and its properties. Of course, these are the basic unit of structure and function, which has evolved over the billions of years time scale, which you can see on the slide. And what we are going to try and recap about some of the crucial properties of prokaryotes and eukaryotes. But before that, let's have a broader view of the cell. Our human body is composed of billions of cells. And now if you look at each of these cells in slightly more enlarged view, now you got the nucleus. If you enlarge the nucleus, now you have all the genome there, all the chromosomes are there, all the genes are there, and the DNA material is there. So all of them together is now you can think about how elegantly all of billions of cells contain so much wealth of data and information, which is all packed inside there. So it's like, when you want to study about a car or want to fix a car, you need to know about all the nut and bolts. And if you open it, it looks so scary like this. And likewise, if you want to study about the cell, now there are groups, especially one at Stanford, Dr. Shapiro's lab, they are looking at the cell circuit, like the design and diagram of interconnectivity of different organelles and how the relay of information happens and moves from one to other place. So again, think about broadly that how the cell communication happen, how different type of molecules, they move from one to other place, different relay of information happens. And all of that is very much intricate phenomenon, which happens to really good accuracy, which happens all the time. So let's now just briefly talk about, some detail about a prokaryotic cell. And it will be like a recap for you, because I'm sure at high school level, you have studied about your, prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Some of these prokaryotic cell, which you might have seen for bacteria or might have studied, they are, having the major name comes as a means primitive. Karyon is the nucleus. So prokaryotics have very primitive nucleus as compared to eukaryote, which is having advanced nucleus. So all the cells are broadly, based on this nuclear compositions are divided into prokaryotes or eukaryotes. What we are just discussing right now to start with about a prokaryotic cell, and these are different shapes, comes from the spherical shape, rod shape, spiral shape, and various type of shape you can see for different microorganisms. So the outer cell is composed of the cell wall, which is quite rigid and composed of polysaccharides and peptides. And then, there are also some sticky material. Sometimes these polysaccharides or the proteins are present there. And those are constitutes the capsule on the outer layer of the cell wall. Inside that, you have this cell membrane, and that is going to provide a relay of information to be conveyed, a separation between the external environment as well as between the cell composition or the cell contents. You have these fimbriae, which is the providing attachment surfaces of the for some bacterial in some prokaryotes. Flagella is also there in some bacteria, which provides the locomotion organelle. Of course, inside here, it's like a balloon, which is totally empty. And inside, all the fluid is actually, floating, and all the organelle, which is there, they're actually all floating freely. And there is no nucleus defined. So the nuclear material, what you see, like, is just free floating DNA, which is inside the cytoplasm, and that is known as nucleoid, which is different than the eukaryotic, which we will talk, when you have very defined nuclear membrane, and that is going to define that all the DNA, RNA, and those nuclear material are inside. Then these are the ribosomes, which are the site of protein synthesis. They are floating again in the in the cytoplasm, and they provide it more granular kind of appearance, and up to 30,000 ribosomes could be there. So again, some of these could be recap for many of you who have already studied at the at least high school level. You have some exposure to that. This is an image from your book, Campbell, which shows you that the structure of prokaryotic cell, the bacterial chromosome, and the nucleoid, plasma membrane, cell wall, ribosomes, flagella. So all of them is again free floating in the very primitive type of nuclear environment, prokaryotes. So to give you some exposure of the how these microorganisms look like, or how we study them in the actual lab, let me show you a very short experimental setup here, and then take you to the lab as well to show you how these experiments can be done.
So before starting the experiment inside the laminar hood, we should first wipe it with alcohol. We are going to show you several steps that are involved in bacterial inoculation in culture. The first step is preparation of agar plate. For this, we need the media, which is prepared using luria broth, and everything, including the media and apparatus, is properly autoclaved. This media contains LB, which is luria broth, and luria broth contains all the requirement molecules that are required for the optimum growth of bacteria, in which agar is also mixed, that is a gelatinous polysaccharides, and help in the as a base for the media. Now the next step is to pour this media into the plate, Petri plate. Around 20 ml of media is poured into it. Let it settle down for some time so that it gets solidified. Similarly, other plates can also be prepared depending upon our objective. Wait for some time till it's completely settled down and cooled so that the plate is properly made. Now, after some time, the solid plate is solidified and it is ready for the next step. So before starting the next step, firstly, label your plate. So here, this plate is labeled. Similarly, other plates should also be labeled. Now, the next step is to prepare the master plate. And we can see our plates are ready. And for this, we will use the mother stock bacteria. So here, before that, we have to sterile the inoculating loop, and we'll dip it into the mother stock, and then streaking will be done onto the prepared agar plate. This streaking can be done in any shape as being shown, in the form of dots or some other shape. Now this plate is done for the streaking, and similarly other plates can also.
All right, so while that was going on, I shifted to the lab and just thought to directly show you how this experiments are done here. So let me just directly take you to the laminar hood and show you like these, the bacterial culture, how you are going to handle and how you can make these plates. So Bahir, you can just quickly explain that.
Yeah, so right now I have just made some plates So from the culture that was already autoclaved, so now I have prepared the plates as you have been shown in the slides. So I have prepared these plates, but after that these plates has to be inoculated, and then that particular colony will be grown. So I can show one streak plate as well. So some of the plate that are, so this is the plate that is just a fresh plate and nothing is seen in this, but this is the plate that is streaked and some bacteria can be culture can be seen in the slide. Yeah, so some streaks are visible here, as you can see like this. So these are the grown bacteria, and then from further any colony can be picked and then inoculated further, and then again we can do. So this way the steps are done. So right now these are the plates that are made, and then all the steps.
one plate as well.
Yeah, so there was one more plate which was, yeah, this one. So this which was inoculated in the streaked in the shape of BB101, as probably it is it is visible now. So BB101 SS is written in this slide.
All right, so I hope that was a bit of fun, and you can see that you can create any shape and the bacteria will grow there. So we'll keep showing you few glimpses of the experiments as we go along. Let me continue that clip and try to share that again once with you.
To be streaked using the mother stalk, as we are writing here in the shape of BB101. Now the streaking step is complete, and for the optimum growth, this plate has to be incubated at 37 degrees for overnight. Now we are keeping the plates in the incubator at 37 degrees. These should be kept in the inverted position. Now they have to be kept there for overnight. So after overnight incubation, now we have to take out the streak plate to see whether the culture has grown or not. So these are the streak plates, and as we can see that now BB101 is visible in the way that we had streaked this way, and the other plate, in this also the colonies are visible, properly growth is done. And in the third plate where we had not streaked anything, so it is blank and no colonies seen. Now that our master plates are ready, and we can now pick one single colony from these plates and further inoculate them to grow that particular bacteria. That culture can be further used, as we are picking now one colony using a sterilized tip. We will then place it in the falcon containing media. So this is the LB, that is Luria broth media. And now we can see that we have inoculated that particular colony from the master plate into this falcon. This bacteria will be now cultured for overnight at 37 degrees. Now we are keeping those inoculated falcons here in the shaker incubator. Now it has to be incubated in the shaker incubator for overnight culture. After this, we'll take this culture for the downstream processing. Now, after incubation, we are taking out these falcons in which inoculation was done. So here we have kept two different falcons in which one was inoculated, and we can see its turbidity, and the other one which is a clear media in which no inoculation was done. Yeah, as you can see clearly that one of them is turbid, it was inoculated. Now we got our bacteria in suspension after growing, and this suspension can be further used for the bacterial identification, such as using gram staining technique.
All right, so let's now move on to some more basics, and let's talk about the bacterium cell wall, because again, now once you have grown the bacteria, you can do many experiments from this. And one typical experiment which can be done is the gram staining. That's very important experiment, because that actually for any kind of unknown bacterial infection, you first want to identify. By the way, looking at the poll result, it looks like many of you understand biology quite well, or have at least good interest in biology. You are picking up the right answer. So the tubes are going to be turbid, which is showing the bacterial growth. So now the rigid cell wall of the bacteria, they are going to provide a protection against sort of osmotic pressure, and they determine the characteristic shapes of different kind of bacterial cells. The gram-positive bacteria, so I'm just showing you on the screen, they have the simpler wall with relatively large amount of peptidoglycans. The principal component of these bacterial cell wall is the peptidoglycan, which consists of the linear polysaccharides, which is having the cross-linking with the short peptides. And unlike these gram-positive, the gram-negative bacteria, they have less peptidoglycan, and they are structurally more complex because they also have additional outer membrane, which contains the lipopolysaccharides. So these kind of properties are, interestingly being utilized for the gram staining, the technique which can stain the bacteria and show them either they're gram-positive or gram-negative, looking at their structural, differences. And some of these properties have also been utilized for antibiotic development. For example, penicillin that inhibits the enzyme responsible for cross-linking between different strands of peptidoglycan, they can actually interfere with the cell wall synthesis and block the bacterial growth. So again, some of these properties could be well utilized for the clinicians to think about after looking at the type of morphology they have, what kind of broad spectrum antibiotics can be given to this particular patient who is coming with an unknown problem, and whether it is gram-positive or gram-negative. So these details of the, having the thick or thin layer of peptidoglycans, and also whether that property could be utilized to retain some stain or the wash of the stain, is utilized in a technique which is known as the gram staining method, which we are going to talk after this. But I hope this just gives you idea that these small details within the bacterial cell wall and looking at additional layers could make the composition quite different for different group of bacteria. So I'll just skip this and move on to this diagram from your book, which shows you the gram-positive versus the gram-negative bacteria. And again, you can see now that the thick cell wall made up of peptidoglycan that actually helps to trap a stain, crystal violet. And even when you rinse your stain, it does not rinse completely the crystal violet stain, and therefore you see this kind of purple or violet pattern of these type of bacteria. Whereas in the gram-negative bacteria, the peptidoglycan layer is quite thin, and therefore crystal violet can easily come out from that. And then when you add another stain, which is safranin dye, that can make it look like appearing pink color. So a second experiment starts. Let's now do the gram staining and see how in the lab setting gram staining can be done.
Now we are going to demonstrate to you the various steps involved in gram staining. Gram staining is the most widely used technique in microbiological experiments. And for this, we need the bacterial sample that we have grown after the overnight culture. And also we have the clean slides. So the first step involved is preparation of smear from this culture bacteria. So for this, we are taking one single drop of the suspension, keeping it over the slide. And then by using another slide, we'll make a thin smear. As you can see here, so gently by using another slide, a thin smear is made. The smear is done for the positive as well as the negative bacteria in a similar way. Then we have to dry it by gently hitting over the fan, as is shown here. Now we have prepared the smear. Next step is to add gram crystal violet stain over the slide. And then we have to keep it for 1 minute. After 1 minute, the stain has to be drained. the slides, the stain is drained. Now we have to apply Gram's iodine solution over the smear. Now on the slide, the iodine is poured. We have to keep this for 1 minute. Now apply decolorizer, Gram decolorizer over the smear, and this has to be applied till the blue color is disappeared. Now the slide has to be rinsed with tap water. Now we have to apply the contour stain, which is safranin, over the slide. And then to keep it for 1 minute. Now the slide has to be rinsed with tap water. Now these slides are washed and then they have to be air dried. After that can be examined under the microscope.
All right, so here we have kept all of these reagents, which is we just showed you in the this video clip. And of course, then we have set up the microscope, which we will be showing you shortly, that how to even visualize these images from the, to look at the pattern, if that gram positive or gram negative. But I hope some of these short clips or the lab views are giving you idea to visualize that how these experiments are being performed. So just a recap of the steps seen so far in this particular concept and the experiment. We are using the series of dyes here: crystal violet, iodine, ethanol wash, and then again we are applying the safranin. Idea is that the gram positive bacteria will take up the purple or the violet color, and gram negative bacteria will show the pink coloration. Before we move on to eukaryotic cell, let's take a quick question from Abhijat. We are running a little bit late. So Abhijat, could you ask a question? Unmute yourself. If not, put in the chat and we will try to reply you. So let's move on in the meantime to eukaryotic cell. And as discussion about prokaryotic, which we had, now eukaryotes, they have the defined nucleus. U means advanced, karyon is nucleus. And you can see there is a well-defined nuclear membrane. And of course, outside there is a plasma membrane shown in the blue color. So this particular nucleus that contains all the genetic information of the cell, and it is having the linear DNA molecules. Nucleus is actually the site of the DNA replication as well as RNA synthesis. Translation of RNA and the protein takes place over there. So you are going to look at how the differences are there from the overall, from the prokaryotes and eukaryotes from the organization point of view, right? It also contains many membrane enclosed organelles in the cytoplasm, like endoplasmic reticulum or the Golgi apparatus, which can really help to store some of the proteins and even transport the proteins involved in the secretion or incorporation into the plasma membrane. So many of these are important network of the endomembranous system. And of course, ribosomes are the site of the protein synthesis. Some of these role of organelle, I will talk more as I go along. Mitochondria is the powerhouse for the ATP generation. You also have in the cell sometimes microvilli, which projects that, increasing the cell surface area. Yes, so these are microvilli. And then in all the eukaryotic cells, they have the microtubules, which could provide the cytoskeletal elements for the providing the shape and support of the cell. And that also serves as a track for the, organelles to provide the motor proteins. The centrosome and the centriole in the animal cells, these microtubules, they grow out from the centrosome, and there is a region which is often located near the nucleus. These microtubules then are going to function as the guiders of the cytoskeleton, and they are going to be involved with the set of microtubules, almost 9 set of triplets of these microtubules, which is going to form the centriole ring. So again, some of these things we will talk more in the context of the cell division as we go. In the meantime, you have already answered correctly the poll for the gram staining results, which looks you are quite careful and seriously watching the lecture as we go along. So this is the all the figures, the number which I am giving you is actually from your textbook, which will help you to keep track of the learning what we have from the course, because the Campbell book is quite large. So you should go and read those sections and those which we are actually highlighting with the figure numbers. So animal cell, we just spoke, has all of these organelle, and the plant cell has some more peculiar organelle, especially the chloroplast plant has the vacuole, very large central vacuole is there. Some of them makes them much more specialized for the different type of function. In all of these eukaryotic cells, there's a cytoplasm, which is the space between the plasma membrane and the outer side, and nucleus inside nuclear membrane. In between that, the cytosol is there, which also contains the ribosome and the other protein complexes. Cytoskeletal membrane system is there. Also, various type of endoplasmic reticulum, which is smooth or the rough, provides the transport. Vacuole, especially in the plants, is very large, helps to digest the macromolecules. So I'll now very quickly show you some of the function of these specialized organelle, like plasma membrane, that is the outer separation, and that provides in some way the connectivity from the outer any signal to be perceived and going inside the cell. So that provides that transport information from the outside environment. Nucleus and the nuclear membrane, that makes the eukaryotic cell very specialized and different in the prokaryotes. That is the site of DNA replication and RNA synthesis. Endoplasmic reticulum, rough endoplasmic reticulum contains ribosome, which synthesizes the proteins. A smooth endoplasmic reticulum does not have the ribosomes. Together, along with Golgi complexes, they make the endomembranous system, and they help like the FedEx system to transport the protein and move the molecules from the nucleus going out till the outer membrane. Golgi vesicles, again, they are like post office to help in the exocytosis or the protein transport. Peroxisome is a specialized organelle, which is having enzyme like catalase to degrade the hydrogen peroxide. These are single membranous organelle. Mitochondria is one of the unique organelle, which is very important for the ATP powerhouse. And it is also provides the site of oxidative metabolism. It is double membranous structure, unlike the other organelle which we spoke. So broadly, if you look at all the various cell which we are talking on this scale from the meters to the nanometers, what you will see, like the normal chicken egg which you see from the unaided eyes, right? Whereas now when you start going to the most of the plant and animal cell between 10 to 100 micron, you need some microscope to visualize them. And then you have most of the bacteria between 1 to 10 micron. And as you keep going down, you have the viruses which you can see. And now when you want to look at viruses or ultra structural detail of different organelle, then you need electron microscopy or super resolution microscopy. So of course, cell biology is a very vast field, and microscopes, a lot of innovations are happening and so much advancements are there. But broadly, for just to make it simple, all the microscope work you can differentiate into two broad themes. One is light microscopy, which allows the imaging of the live cells, whereas all the ultrastructural detail could be viewed by the scanning electron microscope or transmission electron microscope, but they can only look at the dead cells. So various images which I have shown you here from different type of microscopes, you don't have to feel afraid from them. We are not going to ask a question on that. All you need to know here that living cells will be visualized with the light microscopes, and all the SEM and TEM can look at only the dead cells. So let's take a quick experimental break to observe some cells under microscope, requesting one of the TA Avinash to share his screen and show you some images directly from the microscope. And as you can see the setup here, like we are just trying to show you directly from the microscope setup here when some slides have been kept. And Avinash is trying to zoom into those slides and give you some detail about what can be observed in the microscope. So now you can explain what you're observing. What type of cells you want to show?
So these are basically Gram-stand positive cells. So we have prepared the slides. So these are the basically gram-positive cells. So these are all the purple in the picture. So there are other slides if you want to.
Yes, quickly you can
Yeah,
show.
so I'm
some more slides.
changing the slides. It takes a little time to fix the slides.
So maybe you can zoom in, Avinash, and then fix that and show again. We are running towards the end of it, so I have to cover a few more things in the meantime. So, well, all of you can see in the more live way that how you can visualize these cells. We talked about gram staining. And now let me quickly take you a few more small details while he's setting up some other slides. So, you know, all the group of organisms which we are looking at based on these bacterial various type of prokaryotes or eukaryotes, broadly, there are three fundamental groups. One is the bacteria or eubacteria. Second is archaea, also known as archaebacteria. And third is eukaryotes or eukarya. And these divisions or the group of three fundamental groups have been made looking at their ribosomal RNA, 16S ribosomal RNA composition. And the scientist Carl Woese, who did sequencing of these, and then these are now termed as the three fundamental domains. So we have already spoken about two so far, prokaryotes and eukaryotes, but what has come new now is the archaea or archaebacteria. These are also prokaryotes, but they are actually more similar to eukaryotes than the prokaryotes. And they have some peculiar properties which actually makes them a distinct group also. At the same time, they are also showing some facts closer to the eukaryotes. So for example, they have histone proteins, 8 histone proteins which is attached to the DNA molecule, and they form the nucleosome, which is like in the eukaryotes, which is absent in the prokaryotes, which lack the histone proteins. And these RNA and protein components of the archaean ribosome makes them much closer to the eukaryotes as compared to the prokaryotes or the bacteria. So therefore, now you can see three domains of life. We have these bacteria or the prokaryotes, eukaryotes, and additionally, we also have archaea. And there must have been some common ancestor of all of this life. So with this, let me, I'll share this animation clip to you separately, but let me move on quickly to show you a bit of bioinformatics part, which I think will actually be interesting for you to see if anything which we are talking, actually something you can start exploring yourself. So for example, many of these group of organisms, they have various protein, which is sometimes common proteins. And now you want to know the protein sequences. So if you go to this particular web portal, ncbi.nlm.nih.gov, what you can do, you can go to look for the protein sequences, for example, and these are the protein on the left side, protein ID. Now, if you search from that, what it revealed you, it is the hemoglobin subunit alpha protein. And if you go to the their amino acid sequences with the FASTA sequence, you can now just copy this entire information with the accession ID and with this particular sequence for the first protein of interest. And now likewise, let's say I'm copying the second protein and trying to search for what this protein is and what is its sequence. And now what you see again coming is another type of hemoglobin protein, which was earlier, it was the alpha subunit, and now we have the coming from the Bos taurus. Actually, it is also alpha subunit, but from a different organism. Earlier, it was from Homo sapiens. Now it is from the Bos taurus. So same proteins are also present in different group of organism, but there might be certain commonality and differences at their sequence level. Now you can look at it. Now all we are doing is we are searching for some of these specific protein identification with the unique IDs, and trying to get their amino acid sequences and just putting that in one document. So now we have for 3 different proteins, again hemoglobin subunit alpha, but from the mus musculus. And now the 4th protein I'm taking and trying to see, like, what that reveals me. And that is also hemoglobin subunit alpha protein from Calorhynchus milli, another organism, which is again, we are copying the FASTA sequence. So looking at multiple these type of sequences, finally, you'd like to say, okay, the same protein, how this protein has evolved. And can we at least look at bioinformatically some evolutionary aspect of it to get us some idea that how these proteins would have evolved in different group of organisms. So now the same alpha subunit protein of hemoglobin we see from a different organism, Peromyscus. So now once you get these kind of FASTA sequences, you can copy them, and now you can go to another portal, which I'll show you shortly with ClustalW. And now you can do multiple sequence alignment. You would now like to see same protein has evolved in different group of organism, how one could try to make any sort of comparison across different groups. So now you can look at multiple sequences. Even during the COVID time, all of this, what you see, the lineages and many things which have been observed was based on these type of bioinformatics and looking at sequence alignment. Then only one could make some guess that from where this could have originated, right? So these sequences alignment and looking at bioinformatics is very interesting. A lot of things you can do still at your home without requiring any type of specialized software. These are all open access softwares available. So what you see now, these proteins for different group of organisms have actually quite a bit of similarities, and those are actually indicated here, which you can download the alignment files and look at which amino acids are conserved across different species, which ones are having some changes. And of course, you can save these for the future references and further analysis. And then based on this, you can also try to draw some phylogenetic tree. Can you look at how these organisms evolved? And now you can look at their pedigree and look at how they have evolved over the time period. I'll just skip here, but I hope that has conveyed you broadly that a lot of interesting biology could emerge from some, your fingertip, just quickly looking at the sequences, looking at understanding from their alignments. I hope today's lecture has enlightened you about a new partnership which will happen between biologists and engineers. We have tried to recap some of the key concepts of life, where highlighted many examples, showed you diversities and complexities of living organisms. We started discussion about prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, looked at the organism basic unit of structure and function, and tried to show you at least the key differences and key role of some of these organelles. The chapter is essentially made from these 2 lectures of Campbell, lecture 1 and chapter 6 from the Campbell. You can try to do further reading from this. Let me see if Avinash is ready in the meantime to show you the last glimpse of his microscopy slide. And from there, we close it and take you to the your Moodle quiz. Good. So Avinash, you can spin the slide. All right. So to save the time, now we have to stop the session today. I hope all of you will start, feeling more motivated to study biology and start reading Campbell book and going to the lectures and the handouts. We'll stop it here. Today, you are going to play a quiz in Moodle, which is essentially a quiz which will be just for your practice. It is not going to be for grading. So don't feel scared about this quiz. But likewise, from the next lecture, at the end, last few minutes, we will have the quiz, which will be based on the previous lecture. So whatever contents we are discussing today, a real quiz will start from the next lecture onwards. Some of you are still raising hands, so maybe, let me just talk quickly to Sorish. If you want to ask a question, unmute yourself. and then Saloni.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir,
Hi.
will you be revisiting all the organelles in detail again and like the summary of the cell which you did today?
Your voice got slightly broken. Can you repeat yourself again?
So will you be revisiting the organelles in detail once again? Like, or do we have to read it from Campbell on our own?
Right. See, some of the organelle and their role in the context of cell division and cell cycle we'll talk again. In general, many of the other organelle, like for example, mitochondria may be discussed at the time of metabolism and so as the chloroplast. But other general thing you can read from the Campbell book. But difficulty level will not be really very high. Like, it is more sort of preliminary glimpse of the processes. So just do associated reading, but do not need to go to very detailed. Okay. All right, Saloni.
So basically what is, I answered all the questions correctly in the poll, but I couldn't relate everything, like the terms and all. It was like, I didn't know what's going on. Like there were things like I couldn't.
Okay, so see, main thing is, of course, you can see how the pace of the class has to be maintained. Many things are going on. Few things which all of you have doubts. Once we share the video, we'll also share you a feedback form or the query form where you can write your queries, whatever comes to your mind, which is unclear, and we'll try to revert back to you on that. So after each lecture, we will share you a Google form in which you can mention like, certain parts for the poll or any specific slide or any specific experiment or concept or unclear, or you want to get more detail on that, we can clarify that. Nevertheless, polls were essentially to see the class understanding and participation. It was not for a quiz. Abhijat, do you have anything?
Sir, I want to say that could you please slow down the pace of the class from the next lecture? I literally couldn't follow a single thing after the Gram experiment. I couldn't follow anything.
All right. Well, many things were actually quite basic, which we understand that at high school level also you have already studied about the cell and organelle. So that does not require too much time to discuss about it. The things will require
Gram experiment. I never studied about it earlier, and now everything just passed over my head all of a sudden. Like, sorry, couldn't follow it up.
Right. So, of course, everything you cannot catch in the first glimpse itself, and that's where we'll provide you the handouts and the further reading. What we are trying to give you at least the first good exposure of not only theory, but also showing you the experiments, how the things look like, so that you are not afraid of following it up.
So would these be discussed later on, or are we supposed to, follow it up after the class ended and through the handouts and the book?
You have to keep up the pace of the lectures, like, whatever has been discussed today, handouts will be given to you. You should follow those and read the Campbell. And if still some parts are unclear, you can ask your questions in the query form or the Google form. Is there any other class any one of you have right away to leave? I don't want next class to get delayed, but I can definitely take more questions here. Piyush, you have any question or comment? Piyush or Shrishti and Harsh, I see a couple of hands raised. And in the meantime, TL, are we going to start the quiz in Moodle?
Let's start it.
Already started?
Yes, sir. 3:30 is started.
All right. So there is a mock quiz also going on in the Moodle. All of you should start that as well. Anybody want to ask question? Please unmute yourself. Harsh, you have any question?
Sir, I have a suggestion. Like when you are giving the poll, sir, kindly stop for 1 minute to for us to answer that, because when the poll is going on and you are also like continuing with the lecture, so the lecture part is missed in that time. So kindly take a break of like 30 seconds or 1 minute for the poll.
I think that's a good suggestion. Anybody else? Anything you want to add? Rishabh? All right, so
the recording for this will be available on YouTube, right?
Recordings will be available, but you will have to wait a little bit time. We will download this and upload in YouTube, and in the meantime, at least handouts will be given to you, the PPTs, but recordings will be made available shortly.
like the handouts and stuff will be given on Moodle?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So how
All
can
right.
we contact the TAs?
Sorry.
How can we contact the TAs?
Please follow our details of the first interactive lecture. We have given email IDs, and also in all our email, I write that there is an email ID for the TAs where you can write, especially for the general logistics issues. Any specific question or doubt if you have for clarifying, please always contact me directly as well.
Okay, sir, I have another question. Say
Yes.
we have a microscope at home. Is there any way we can do these experiments ourselves?
If you have a microscope at your home,
Yes.
of course, many experiments can be done. In fact, these kind of staining and these are very simple work which can be done. But of course, we would not recommend you to do bio experiments at home because there are a lot of biosafety issues which will be involved. And as you can see, the labs are protected with people have to follow all the safety norms. So it's a good idea to have some exposure, but not to start these experiments on your own.
Okay.
All right, Mukesh, you have something to ask? Okay, I think still I see many hands raised, but I'm not sure if people are not able to speak, then we can't wait too long. People can unmute yourself. Shrishti, you want to unmute and talk?
Sir, we have to only follow Campbell book or any other reference book?
Well, Campbell and also only specific sections of Campbell. You don't have to read entire Campbell book. It's quite large, especially the chapters which I'm mentioning, and also the figure number which we are showing. Those specific sections you should read in detail.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sir, we have to read chapter 1 and 6 for this lecture.
And within those, there are specific sections which I have highlighted with the figures. Those sections you need to read, because again, there is too much in the book. We understand that you will have to take many courses. For additional reading, you can always read as much as you have interest, but just from the course point of view, specific sections of these two chapters will be good. Kanishk, you want to ask something?
Sir, where are the handouts to be uploaded?
Handouts will be given in the Moodle as well as in the YouTube video.
And sir, we have to read all the whole chapter 1 and 6.
Let me not repeat myself. I have already explained this a couple of times. Mukesh, you have any question?
Sir, the TA mentioned regarding like if you don't enter the class in first 10 minutes, you won't be allowed. But then what if the Zoom app crashes? It happened with me twice today. So like I had to rejoin again.
That is the tough, good and bad part of online stuff. So we will consider that. I think that's probably we understand there is no other way around. Although we don't want to see people coming late because in most of the important concept you will miss out. But at the same time, we also realize the challenges of connectivity. So we will allow you.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask regarding the cell organelles that you explained. So if we are not familiar with the basics, so do we read that from Campbell or some other books that you would also
Campbell is more
recommend?
than sufficient. That is the textbook. Do not go anything beyond that.
Okay.
And not much is expected you to learn beyond my slides and beyond Campbell.
Okay, sir.
You want to keep it little simple, do not worry too much.
And the experiments that you showed today, are they also like part of the course or is that extra?
It's not extra, it's part of your learning, right? So how you learn about bacteria and you learn about gram staining, that theoretically we are teaching, but practically we are showing you to appreciate that how things really happens. You don't have to then mug around the dyes and terms.
Yes, yes.
So that's the idea. Otherwise, we don't have to show the experiment. We can just simply talk the theory, but then theory becomes more difficult to follow. Since we are in the lab, we have opportunity to show you something more. So that's what we are doing, but it's not a lab course. All right, Shivesh, you have something?
So what will be the basis of next lecture so that we can pre-read and follow up?
Next lecture will be about cell cycle. I have already mentioned all my 7 lectures in my very first interactive session and already uploaded the handout. So if you want to be ahead, you can read that.
So I meant the chapters from the Campbell book. which
You will
be
find the full chapter on the cell cycle.
Okay, sir.
All right, but I think, as long as you guys can just finish whatever we talked today, keep up that pace and go through the handouts and the Campbell and be ready for the quiz based on this for the next class. I think that way you will maintain the pace. Of course, you can always be ahead and read more. Okay, all right, Mukesh, you have something? And Kanish, last two, then we will close. Any other hands raised? Aryan, Mukesh. Somebody I see in the chat is
Sir?
there a negative marking in the quiz.
Sir,
No,
can I ask something?
Yes.
So will the quiz for the next class, that's the quiz 3, be based on today's class's topics?
That will not be quiz 3. That will be actually become official quiz 1 in terms of the graded quiz.
So will that be based on today's notes or
That will be
next
based on
classes?
today's lecture. That's what we have already clarified earlier, so that you have sufficient time to go through the contents.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes. Aryan? All right. So okay, a new hand has been raised. Harshil, last comment from you. Today's quiz is not graded, by the way, students. Those who are raising hand, please unmute yourself and move fast. Ask questions quickly. Harshil.
Yes, sir. Sir, my question was that in those graded quiz, how will be the marks considered? Like, will there be negative marking or something like that?
There will be no negative marking, at least, if you have answered the correct options. But if you do all the multiple options, check that, then that will not be considered. So that you have to be cautious. Only the correct options has to be marked.
Okay, and there will be no negative marking.
There will be no negative marking, but if you are doing multiple options, then of course that will not be considered.
Yes.
Okay. One more student, I can't read the name. Roll number is 40136. You want to talk anything? Ask any question? All right. So I hope all of you were able to follow the most of the class, and few things which you might have found slightly fast to the pace. You can always watch the recordings and go through the Campbell book. In a short time, what we have, which is still not very short, but 90 minutes, we do try to make use of every single minute in multiple ways to show you the theory and practicals and try to engage you in some questions. I hope that will be a good beginning of all of you to start BB 101, and let's meet again on Thursday. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.